Now for Global Business Updates, Rotus Oddiri joins us.
Good morning, Dr. Bati. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers on a rainy, moist Lagos Wednesday. Let's begin. Just three topics today. Jerome Powell, Access Holdings, and GTCO. That's all we're talking about today. Very quickly, Jerome Powell, of course, he was on Capitol Hill. No need to start repeating 2% inflation. We know he's repeating the same thing since he was in Portugal last week and the prior week time when they had their FOMC meeting. There were two fascinating things that he was asked about. One was on housing. The other was on immigration. Here's what he said on housing and how monetary policy impacts that.
So we do pay a lot of attention, and I would agree with you. We have significant housing issues in the country, and we had them before the pandemic. Certainly, the pandemic has created new distortions, and you know, monetary policy works through interest-sensitive spending. There is no more interest-sensitive spending than buying a house and having a mortgage. So, for sure, our tighter policy is having an effect on economic activity in the housing sector. But I would also say the best thing we can do for housing is to succeed in getting inflation down to 2% on a sustainable basis so that rates can come down so that the housing market can get back to what was the pre-pandemic normal, which is to say still a housing shortage, but not dealing with the kinds of specific things we're dealing with now.
There was a lot more I wanted to share. For the lack of time, we just can't do that. But I want everyone to think about our housing market here. We had an estate surveyors forum not too long ago. How liquid is Nigeria's mortgage sector? How much can you put down as a down payment? How far can you spread out your payments? Interest rates, all those things. A lot to think about. Now, immigration. You all know there's an election coming up. You know the talking points from Donald Trump, who just returned to the campaign trail after being away for like 10 days. The immigrants are coming in, they're destroying America, and so on and so forth. Listen to Jerome Powell talk about the impact of immigration on expanding the U.S. economy.
We don't, just to make the point that you made, we don't take a position, we don't comment on immigration policy. We have no responsibility for it. It's not our job. But so we just look at the numbers and we sort of try to assess the economic consequences of immigration. And over the last 2 years, 2 years ago, we had an economy where we really had a labor shortage. And what's happened is we've had a wave of immigration, and many of those people have gone to work and gone to work legally through the asylum process. Not all of them. There's also a group that has not been legally processed, but many of this latest group have been have sought asylum and then gone through the process of getting a work permit. So what that means is that employers wanted workers, and there were more job openings than there were people actively seeking work or working. And so now you have a new supply of workers, and they've filled those jobs. So we have a bigger economy, but it's not a tighter economy because labor supply has increased the economic capacity. That's just the arithmetic. That's not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. There are other policy choices that could be made, and they're not for us to make.
When you say greater economy,
a larger economy.
In other words, it has improved the growth of our economy.
Right, the economy grew 3.4%, I believe, last year. Mm-hmm. And some part of that was that, as Congressional Budget Office analysis showed, and to many surprise, there had been a really significant uncounted group of workers coming into the country who had gone to work. And that's part of the story of how the economy managed to grow that much while inflation was coming down pretty sharply. Inflation came down 2 full percentage points during 2023 while the economy was growing at 3.4%. So, and while these people were coming in. So that is part of the explanation for why we had such an interesting and pretty good year in 2023.
So, look, again, bringing it home. If you want to expand your economy, you need to create jobs. Think about the whole jackpot syndrome. That's just asylum he was mentioning. There's also the skilled visas. Think of all the skilled people that are leaving emerging economies and going to places like the US and Canada. And you just need to create jobs. It's going to be a very, very interesting pathway going towards the election later on in November. But jobs, jobs, jobs. Let's get to Nigeria now. Look, I don't know if you watched the facts behind the figures from GTCO, Segun Agbaje, and the MD of Access Bank, MD CEO Roosevelt Ogbonna. It was incredibly entertaining. I can't play all the clips for you, but let's start with, of course, the recapitalization exercise. Let me give you the figures first. GTCO's public offer, right? So at the NGX stock exchange, the offer size, 9 billion shares. They're aiming to raise about 400.5 billion. Offer price 44 naira 50 kobo. Offer period 21 days through July 2024. What are the proceeds being used for? Recapitalization, expansion, right? Now, look at the stock performance. GTC, as you know, is one of the, in fact, in terms of profitability and market capitalization, GTCO leads all banks in Nigeria. That's one of the reasons why Segun Agbaje doesn't really give too many interviews. I mean, Arise News is one of the few outlets he's spoken to in recent years. He lets the bank's performance do the talking. So you look at the stock price as of yesterday, 45 naira 50 kobo. So far this year, 18.45% return. 1 year return 31.9, 2 year return 132%, 3 year return 61. Now, let's get to some of the things that Segun Agbaje said. First of all, here he is talking about, and this is something I've been saying, the investment case for Nigeria. Here is Segun Agbaje on the facts and figures talking about the macroeconomic backdrop of Nigeria.
The macroeconomic environment in Nigeria, it's a great time to be in Nigeria. Forget what people think. This is a perfect time to invest in Nigeria. The country has moved into what I call an orthodox monetary policy situation. We lived for years in an abnormality, an exchange rate that was completely overvalued and did not move, interest rates that were negative. It is impossible to run a country or grow a country that way. So what has happened in the last few years, last few months, is that things are normalizing. Yes, it's a bit painful, but we've got to go through that to get where we're going. And that's why we are running an inflation of 33%, but NPR is 26.25, which means that gap has been closed. And for people who save and for old people and pensioners, your pension and your wealth is not being destroyed because we're normalizing interest rates, which is absolutely important. For us who used to be in banks, we used to wake up and take CRRs. Some banks had 22% CRR, some had 90, some had 65. How is that a level playing field? Now we have a level playing field. Everybody's 45% CRR. We're beginning to behave in a very normal way. Exchange rate, painful. There's been a devaluation, but guess what? There's been a conversion at about 1,500. For me, the important thing about an exchange rate is stability. Once you have stability in an exchange rate, you can plan. And that is where we're getting to. It will be a painful process, but life adjusts, incomes adjust, habits adjust. And if we're stable about 1,500, I think we can all live happily at some point.
Now, he was asked during a question and answer about expansion into other. No, sorry, this is not even the question and answer. Even before then, listen to what. Now, this is where things got interesting. He said something about expanding into other African nations. Listen to what he said on expansion into Africa.
Outside of Nigeria, we pick our countries. I'm not going to name any banks. We're not in 40 countries. There's no business in 40 countries. It's a waste of time. We go to countries where there's GDP growth. There's a youthful population. The loan-to-deposit ratio is low. Everything, there's opportunity for growth. And those are the countries we go to. And when we look now, we think Senegal is underbanked. Great opportunity. Tanzania, great opportunity for us. Uganda, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya. We're not saying we're going to 30-something countries. We're going to countries where there is scale and where we can make a decent amount of money.
All right, now let's get to that. You have to read between the lines. There are some banks that have expanded into certain parts of Africa, and that's who he was shading. Now let's get to Access Holdings, right? Access Holdings also did a facts behind the figures presentation at the NGX yesterday as well. You look at their rights issue. Rights issue, offer size 17.7 billion shares, 351 billion naira, one new ordinary share for every two existing as of June the 7th. Offer price of 19 naira 75. Offer period July 8th to August the 14th. Now, stock price performance. July, as of yesterday, Access Holdings, Access Corp, 19 naira 35 kobo. Yesterday, down 16%. But you look at the 1 year, the 2 year, and the 3 year, you know, triple digits, right? Now, now you have to listen very carefully to Roosevelt Ogbonna, who is the MD CEO of Access Holdings. Listen carefully to what he said. This is his reply, basically, on FX revaluation gains. Take a listen.
Our business is built on 3 pillars: people, planet, profit. We remain a very responsible bank. We ensure that from a people perspective, we're making an impact in the markets and the communities that we serve. We are not here for the short term. Like every business and every financial institution, we live our lives in quarters. It just so happens that in our view, a quarter is 25 years. So we're here for the long term. It's not about making money in the short term. It's not about showing fantastic results as a result of foreign exchange gains. We ensure we build real value. We ensure that the business that we do serves the markets and communities that we operate in.
So at the end of the day, all these jabs being thrown back and forth, Nigeria's financial sector is healthy. GTCO is doing very well. Access Corp is doing very well. We, the consumers, are the ones that win when these banks are competing and, you know, throwing jabs at each other. It was very entertaining stuff. That's our updates for today.
Well, thank you very much, Rotus. We've run out of time.